Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fighting the Void. I am your host, Ginger. And wait, that's not right. That's right.
There we go.
It's me, so I'm taking over today because, well, I'm friends with the guests, and I figured, hey, why not? So, with my co-host Ginger, this time taking the back seat, though he'll still be a huge part of the show, and we have a very lovely Twitter personality and a podcast hoster himself, Amos Joseph. Welcome to
Hi.
welcome to Fighting the Void, Amos.
How's it going?
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. We've been wanting you on for a while, but then it's like I think it was around the time. No, actually, funny story. I think it was the same night. I'm like, hey, dude, we should have you on the podcast. That's I think the same night. Ginger was like, so work is gonna take over for a bit.
Oh, really? You guys were talking about this that long ago?
Yeah. Like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then we met in person, and then we're like, oh, yeah, we talked about that.
We really should get back to the plan. Here we are. So before we dive into the topics, Amos, do you want to tell the people a little bit about yourself, about your podcast?
Yeah. Well, first off, my name's Amos Joseph. I run the Shitlord Preachers podcast. We're on Sundays at 11 o'clock in the morning Central Time. And then our podcast episode gets edited and sent off to iTunes. It usually goes up Monday or Tuesday. I dropped the ball and it was a little bit behind. So actually we have 2 episodes coming out. So it was the week before's and today's comes out tomorrow and Tuesday in succession. So we're on, I'm on Twitter at Amos Joe. And then of course you can check out us on Shitlord Preachers on iTunes. Funny thing, you have to word it differently to get approval from iTunes. Then you change the name back to with the word shitlord in order to pass. I don't know how long that'll last. I basically had to call it the SLP podcast. And then they approved it. Then I changed it back.
Wow.
So sneaky.
Yeah, because they don't want it to be. It's like you can put in explicit, but they still don't want the name to be explicit. It's like then what's the point of me telling iTunes it's explicit?
Right.
But we're there weekly. We've been doing it we're on our 47th episode we just did. But we've been doing it for over a year and a half. We've just had a lot of unfortunate huge blanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
That definitely happens. I mean, we know how that goes. We had essentially a big blank period, or every now and then I would throw up just a short solo thing for like 2 months, really.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like he was busy with work and I just personally needed a break to sort myself out. And then when we came back, and then I was like, hey, Ginger, I have to go again because I'm going on a road trip to move my boyfriend over here. But it kept going while I was gone. So now we're back on a steady. I'm lost for words right now.
Well, we do it now more often than we did before. Before we were roughly every other week. Now we're actually just doing it every week.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, yeah.
Plus, you guys got guests.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We've been doing a lot more guest stuff too, which is very fun. Getting other people's opinions on things and discussing things that we normally wouldn't be able to do just by ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Not without, this thing called research. Yeah.
Right? Like that. Oh my God. Anyway. So the first topic for the evening, I was wondering we could start off with something a little lighter, not too serious. The libertarian circle on Twitter and the infighting that has been going on a lot within it lately. Because I know, do you consider yourself a libertarian, Amos, or?
Yes, I do. I can. But I mean, there's obviously differences on things. Like there's some libertarians that are you get in too much into the no true Scotsman among libertarians. It's like, you're not a libertarian because you believe in some taxes still. You're not a libertarian because you still believe in some state. Like, it's like either you're ANCAP or you're not a libertarian. And it's like, it's not always like that. So, I mean, there has to be, I think, libertarians' core tenets is just understanding sort of a one guy. If you guys know Freedom Tunes,
Yes.
he basically said it's sort of basically libertarians are kind of like agnostics and atheists about government.
Mm.
We don't quite believe in the validity of those things. So there are the atheists, of government that are like ANCAPs, and you have the agnostics that are basically like minarchists or just what are considered like libertarian constitutionalists, people that want to go back to 1776 America in terms of government.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And from what I can tell, and it strictly as a matter of practicality, it seems like most libertarians and a great many conservatives, I don't know if I'll say most, really are minarchists.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they went all the way with what they wanted, yeah, it would be like a minarchist ideal. But then it comes you come down to like for me personally, I think borders are one of the tricky things with libertarians. Some libertarians say no borders, and it's like, well, you can't just eliminate borders with a welfare state.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't. Borders would be like the last thing you want to take down. I think in dismantling different departments of the state, borders would have to be one of the last things, not one of the first things. So when it comes to questions of like the border wall and all this stuff,
right?
I would either you could either dismantle welfare or you build the wall. That's how I would see it. Now, am I for the fact that my money is going towards building a wall? No. Actually, there was an article. There's a video that I saw the other day. A company is going to reach out to the Trump administration to offer their services to build a wall for a fraction of the price. Which I thought was interesting. I was like, we're going to privatize the border wall?
Well, I mean, in terms of just getting it built, yeah. I mean, that's how it should work. It should work. Right. Here's these 5 construction companies, and they bid it out, and the government says, well, we like you could do a good job and not rape me. Sold.
Right. But then it still comes down to the fact that the government is still that middleman. Well, that middleman, and not everyone agrees with that. So in principle, I wouldn't be for a border wall, but I do see the practicality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one other thing too, I mean, you mentioned that it would be like one of the borders are like the last thing you'd want to get rid of. I think I would actually take it a step farther and say you can't get rid of it unless everyone else around you is also got the same basic principles and everything. Because if you've got a potentially, not that we do, not that we have this issue, but say, just for sake of argument, if you have a potentially aggressive state next door, you can't just not have borders.
Right. Well, it's not even just aggressive states,
or even aggressive drug cartels, which we do have.
Well, right. And one of the problems I do see with libertarians when it comes to this argument is they tend to kind of go blind to the idea that different cultures don't function properly in the U.S. So what you have going on in like Europe, libertarians, any libertarian I'll talk to will acknowledge there's a problem, but they are afraid to talk about it with fear of sounding like, if I say the words demographic shift, I'm a racist.
Right.
But it's a reality. Am I saying like, oh, start using some sense of force and just like purging a country? No, I'm just saying is discussing the issue is very different from trying to offer some like radical authoritarian move to do something crazy. And libertarians don't really have that nuance. It's all individuals, and you can't talk about groups. You can't talk about trends. You can't talk about demographics. You can't talk about statistics.
Yeah.
Just to talk about it, just to see, because it wouldn't be in pursuing the principles of individualism. You would have the conversation to then have a social movement to address it instead of government to address it.
Mm-hmm.
If we as a community decide we want to behave, have a certain cultural identity, we'll say,
Yeah.
we should be able to form that. But that's whereas the line that they're afraid of crossing is they think talking about voluntary, communities. There's even this idea of covenant communities. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that.
I have.
Yeah,
Rings
covenant
a bell,
communities.
but definitely explain.
Right. Basically, it's just like it's like a voluntary gated community.
Mm.
Okay.
But on maybe on like a scale of like a village or a city or something.
Okay.
And completely voluntary though.
Okay.
But you start to sound like, to the masses, you're sounding like an identitarian, a white nationalist, alt-right and such. And it's like, no, it's totally not that at all. Those guys actually do want some sense of state intervention when it comes to establishing communities like that.
Yeah.
And I would say that's totally against libertarianism, using the government. You want to go form your own community and such, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's my problem with the libertarians and really the Libertarian Party too, is the Libertarian Party is just the party. It's a party politics kind of thing. And then libertarians are too caught up in the individual that they fail to see larger pictures on things.
Yeah. And I'd say that actually does kind of make sense because, a lot of the thing about the Libertarian Party is that it really is very individualistic. Like each and every single libertarian has their own different set of like ideas of how things should be. And there was one comment made by a libertarian on Twitter. You two both familiar with Morgan as a Wizard?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was kind of I can't fully remember, and I don't know if this is the proper wording of it, but she was basically kind of like, she made a comment to like another libertarian, and it was kind of like, oh, it almost seemed like another argument was going to start, even though it didn't really happen. But someone commented to her like, why is there always like this infighting between libertarians? Why can't we all just like get along and not always be fighting each other? And she said that like, well, the only real thing connecting all libertarians is the idea of like liberty and don't tread on me. Otherwise, everything else is free game when it comes to the principles of like each individual libertarian and whatnot. And I was actually curious. I think I brought this up on not the last podcast, but the previous one when we had Sam.
Mm-hmm.
I think I brought it up then, either on air or off. And I was actually kind of curious, Amos, what your thoughts on that remark are. Like, is that?
Yes, it's true, but it's different though. Like you need to see, yes, liberty. Like so, the background of the name Shitlord Preachers, my show, it's because not only are my friend, my co-host Brooke and I, not only do we identify as sort of the shitlord, but we also used to be preachers. So one of the things we saw in the church was very much what you're saying here is the church is, Christendom. So including the Catholic Church, depending on who you talk to, but mainly among like evangelicals, Protestants, and so on, like basically anyone that's not the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church actually does a pretty good job about staying fairly uniform. They're kind of like, they're really like a political party in a lot of ways. They tend to stay pretty, but then among Protestants, among pretty much the rest of Christianity, you have, I think in the US alone, there's like 40,000+ denominations.
It depends on how you, I not to get too far into the weeds on that, but it depends on how you define denomination. Being a Catholic, I was at one point fond of using that in discussions with Protestants, but it was pointed out by another Catholic who is an actual apologist. It's like, yes, there's like 40,000 different names of Protestant churches out there. True statement. But when it comes down to actually what their beliefs are, yeah, there's more like about 70 or so. Like once we actually get down to what
you have. I mean, you definitely have
what their doctrines are and the where
right. You look
they
at
really lie into differences.
You look at sort of it's kind of like a family tree.
Yeah.
And but what happens is you have slight disagreements. I think there was like and again I'll just say this and we'll kind of bring it back around. But there was like a comic I saw or meme or something. It was showing like someone was like falling. Like they were holding on to like a ledge or something, and then this guy comes up and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I saw you fall. Like, let me help you, but before I help you, like, I want to make sure, like, what religion? Well, I'm Christian. Okay, cool. What kind of Christian? Well, I'm a Baptist. Okay, what kind of Baptist? Well, I'm Baptist.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Are you Baptist Church of this area or Baptist Church this area? Oh, I'm Baptist Church this area. Okay. Are you First Baptist or Second Baptist? Are you First Baptist of like 18 something or First Baptist of like 19? Those are like, and then it's like he said like the 1 year off or something, like because there's different churches form different years, and he goes, "You heretic!" Kicks him off the ledge, And it's like that, like. I've even seen like pictures people have like it's like a family tree of all of the denominations, and they'll be like, and this is us right here, and Jesus only loves us because we got it right. And it's so in a similar way you have among libertarians, you have if you take any sort of like political compass test, different websites do it differently. But if you really look at it, there's you have your classical liberal libertarians, you have neoliberals, you have libertarian capitalists, you have libertarians, you have constitutional libertarians, you have anarcho-capitalist libertarians, minarchist libertarians, you have just a whole list of different among the different lines. It really comes down to where you are on the finer points of where the state should be and shouldn't be. You have bordertarians. That's apparently a label I'm supposed to hold because I believe some sense of borders. And you have all this. And what it comes down to is just when you agree on just the basic things of freedom and liberty, instead of having debates and infighting, have discussions. I mean, debates, yes, but debates in a proper context where you're not like fighting, you're debating.
Yeah,
you're having, because you have
a debate and an argument.
Right. Like, I've been, I've been on other podcasts and they've talked about, different, even other more fringe sort of elements of like libertarianism. Like you have your actual like full just black flag anarchists, because like ANCAP is like black and yellow, and then they have just black pure anarchism, or you have like black gray like agorism. Those are like, that's talking about like basic what they call you're basically trying to operate in basically financial systems outside of the state. It's in a way of resisting the state, so you participate in what's called like gray and black markets and such. Having a conversation, learning about that is very fun, but then it's like for the libertarians way up towards closer towards believing in some of a state, there becomes that infighting, and then we sit here and wonder why we don't get anyone elected. I mean, we do, but it's like 1 in 1,000, if that.
Well, the theory has been floated that the Libertarian Party, the actual political apparatus, doesn't have a whole lot of interest in actually winning many elections.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like you have anarchists within libertarianism that actually just don't believe in voting. And the other problem is they get so that infighting starts to actually interfere with these elections. Gary Johnson is a perfect example. So many people are now looking in hindsight, everyone hates him. But they don't realize how important it was for someone like him to make an impact. Say what you want about Gary Johnson. He was, they say, oh, he's not this way enough. He's not that way enough. He's still such a statist or something. And it's like, yeah, but think of it this way. The way our government works, the way the gridlock is, you need to make small incremental changes. Even Gary Johnson is considered pretty radical in the modern day political landscape. He wanted to abolish the IRS and institute a federal consumption tax. That doesn't sound like I mean, to us, we're thinking like, dismantle the entire state or just, break it down to municipalities running affairs.
Yeah,
but
breaking down the IRS is I'm okay with that.
Right. It's like I would rather, he was the most electable individual, whereas now you have the Libertarian Party. I mean, at one point, people were bowing down to people like they really wanted someone like Adam Kokesh, if you guys have heard of him.
That name sounds familiar.
He was a running under the Libertarian Party to run for president, but he was like almost full blown, like basically full blown, getting really close to ANCAP, like less than a minarchist. Like he wanted basically like for the government to be broken down to just municipalities, just like smaller than the state, but not and let's he's gonna run. It's like but he has no chance in hell to be elected.
Yeah,
way too radical. You're not gonna just like elect a guy who's just gonna dismantle literally everything.
Yeah.
You need to elect someone that's going to just dismantle a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that gets people thinking, oh, hey, this is pretty nice. Let's elect another one.
Right.
And then he breaks it down a little bit.
That was something that I noticed Ron Paul even recognized. He was, in terms of principle, at least, it seemed like he would go pretty far. But listening to interviews, reading him, he's like, but let's be honest. We're not going to get there overnight. You're going to have to like shift things.
Yeah, because you can't really go on with such a jarring change. Because for the most part, it's kind of human nature to naturally be into change. I mean,
inertia is real.
Yeah, and it's like, so most people aren't really that open to change. So if you want to have change, you have to start little by little. You can't just go, so I want this guy to win because he's going to get rid of all y'all. Like, I want him to win. It's like, that's not going to fly, because if you're trying to get someone elected whose whole idea is to get rid of almost everyone, well, no one's going to want that guy because, hey, he's making this huge change. Like, I don't want this huge change. It's really like, I know.
Right.
There has to be small changes, and
and that's the thing, is incremental change is very difficult for libertarians. They really want like
all or nothing.
Yeah, and it's like that you're not going to get elected that way. As as much as I identify very much with like being a minarchist and such in my views, you still have to like face reality. There is still a huge structure in place that just because we're 1 or 2% of the population, if that, doesn't mean we're just going to go out there and dismantle the whole thing overnight.
Yeah, and that's it's also an issue of you kind of have to be, I don't want to say nicer, but you have to kind of be more open to the fact that not everyone's going to be open to making these such huge changes. Like, I know there have been multiple times where, I mean, I'm kind of a mix of things, but it's like I kind of go along with like, okay, I'm like a right-wing libertarian, like conservative libertarian. I just go with that because it's the easiest, but I'm kind of all over. But I've had times where it's like I follow, these different libertarians, and I listen to like what they're saying and whatnot. And there will always, a lot of times there will come a time where there's an issue they're discussing about where I disagree with them on, but they kind of have like this attitude or aura, or they just flat out say, you disagree with this, you're a statist, and get out.
Right. And it's, and even when just trying to like bring in more people, not even into like the party, just bringing people into thinking about the ideas, where it becomes just it becomes just kind of ridiculous, because then we start to look like idiots. I mean, when I started seeing So the big push with Gary Johnson with the Libertarian Party was, we're sort of this like happy medium between the Republicans and Democrats. We're the reasonable party. We're the choice that most Americans should identify with. We're gonna, we're not playing into party politics. We're not about all that, and we're relevant and we're cool and all this. And then Gary Johnson loses, and then we're like, screw that guy. And then we start even going further, and then we start jumping onto the Trump derangement syndrome train, and then and then just all sorts of stuff start to happen, and then we just look like this, crazy cousin at the family reunion that's throwing a fit out there in the middle of the field while everyone else is inside having fun mingling with the other family members. It's just
yeah,
we're not relevant. We're not really that reasonable, and we're not going to fit in. We have to play. You kind of have to play the game a little bit.
Yeah,
you gotta get people thinking. I had to really like change the way I approach talking to people about things. I can't just taxation is theft. I gotta explain it. Well, you work, yeah. You work for a company, yeah, and you get paid, yeah. Why do you have to give it to and it gets given to the government? Yeah, and so they understand that. But you're still driving on potholes.
Yep.
Your money is going to wars that you probably don't agree with, and it's funding things you definitely don't agree with. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you okay with that?
Yep. That's entirely true. No matter who you are, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, I guarantee you the government is funding something you don't like.
Exactly. So then you explain that to them, and that's a huge thing. Whereas, the typical libertarian thing is just taxation is theft and your status if you disagree.
Yeah.
Like, you have to really walk them through the thinking and go, huh. I mean, okay, I'll just say this. I had a date earlier this weekend, and I had to, and this was actually it was weird. I found myself in a weird position of on a date, but also explaining libertarianism to a girl.
You are a wild first date.
she's like, but what I liked was she was actually interested. She was like, what is this? What do you mean? Tell me about that. I'm like, okay, well, you work for a company. And so I'm like walking through it. She goes, oh yeah. And she's more on the left. And I'm like, and I never would have thought that, but I was like, at least we're having the conversation. But it's just one of those things where you got to be relatable, you got to be relevant, you got to make it in a way that people can be able to look at it through their daily life. It's not just, we have bases all over the world and we need to stop that. Well, why would they care? Doesn't affect them. Really doesn't. But you walk them through, okay, your tax dollars fund bases in other parts of the world. You walk them through the process. Oh, you're making politics, but also libertarianism be more understandable to the common person. Right. Instead of, waving no step on snake all over the place.
Yeah.
And hoping people will, talk to you.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Is like if you want other people to be open, you have to be open yourself.
Right.
Like I for one, no matter what political opinion you hold or what side you're on, I am immediately turned off if you treat other people who think differently or don't agree as if they're stupid. Like there's a lot of people on the right I stopped listening to because they had an attitude on the left and like. Who are libertarians, like it's a huge turnoff because if you want to persuade people, the last thing you want to do is treat them as if they're stupid for not agreeing in the first place.
Right. They scream status all day, but it's like they realize, as an analogy, you're basically you're looking like, you're outside of the town square yelling inside. You're a bunch of status, and it's like you look like an idiot. You got to go inside wearing a lot of the same clothes, be relevant, and kind of go, hey, it's pretty cool out here.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually have freedom over here,
right?
And then bring people with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of that is actually also being able to go beyond 101, because you brought up the foreign bases. Right. You got to be able to go, because you're going to get somebody who's going to be like, oh, Okay, yeah, you're right. But what happens when we leave? It's the power vacuum argument.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then who's gonna fill that? Because somebody will, and you've got to be able to address that as well. Because eventually, you are going to get the guy who's been like, yeah, I get the whole taxation assess thing, and I get the small government, but this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think it does have to go beyond that, and there's different answers to that. One could just be like, you know what? Yep, we're gonna sit here, and if they come to our shores, well, good luck. And there's, I don't know. I imagine there's different degrees that you could argue with involvement with trading allies and whatnot. But yeah, it's that's a question that I think deserves an answer from libertarians, even if it is just, you know what, not worried about it, not my problem, not my fight.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing too, is the whole "not my problem" argument. With libertarians is, so for example, I could say like, hey, I was just reading the other day, I could come up to a libertarian, a very typical one that I come across. Hey, I hear like this single motherhood thing is a real problem in the US. It's like messing up our society. Not my problem. That's what a libertarian would say. Whereas the left and the right at least have an answer. Granted, right, they're both pretty biased, and I think it's pretty crappy answers, but at least they involve themselves in the conversation, and people start to take sides on a thing. And the libertarians don't bring a third view to like look at things from the view of, okay, individualism and freedom. It's like, okay, oh yeah, single motherhood is a problem. Well, why is that? Okay, so we look at things like welfare. We look at things like state involvement. We look at things at like, how public schools, how that's educating people and stuff. And then we look at all that and we kind of say, yeah, those things are contributing factors to it. And then people go, oh, okay. But we're not actually saying like, oh, not my problem. We're not being just dismissive because, oh, it's a social issue. Any conversation about it, we're just going to be statist. It's like, no, you can have a conversation and see like how the state actually creates these problems, which I believe it does.
I think I think the state exacerbates the problems.
Oh yeah, it doesn't allow for the sort of, I guess, social pressures to kind of correct things. So
exactly, I think the state so often tries to fix an actual problem, and then just winds up making it so much worse.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why, like years ago, I started recognizing like the most dangerous disease in the country is do something-itis. It's like, no, we really don't need to do something. It's like, just stop trying to do things. You tend to suck at it.
Right.
Like, yeah. What things? What do you mean we suck at things? I mean, like, all the things. You mostly suck at them.
Yeah.
I think someone said, what is it? Name one thing the government can do cheaply and efficiently.
I'm sure there's something.
Print money.
Print money. There you go.
I was going to say breathing, but okay.
I will say this, though. I once posted a very similar question in the online college course I was taking, and somebody did come back with it was something like, name like 1 or 10 things or something, positive things that the government has actually done, and he was like, responded with the Bill of Rights. I was like, touche.
Well, granted, the government didn't do it. It was a group of guys that agreed on how to do it.
Fair, but still, they were the politicians and all of that stuff. But I was like, yeah, okay, that's a fair point. They were the guys running the country at the time. So
yeah, and the thing about that though is interesting. Is I heard someone talk about this, how So, we look at the government as it is today, and we obviously a lot of libertarians agree there's a lot of problems. The state is too big. There's just too much power it has over us. Statism. It's just that's what it is. And they wonder how we got there. And I think someone basically said the problem is for how free the U.S. was back in when our founding. Having that freedom led to this. Because
their argument.
Because basically we're like, oh, there's this thing going on. Well, we have the freedom to make it law, right? Yeah, we'll make it a law. So we made it a law into this, and we made it a law into that. Next thing you know, 260 some odd years later, here we are, a whole bunch of laws later, and there's no way of really working our way back because now people are comfortable with that. The gradual change led to this. It will be the gradual change that will go back there. But that's very tough to do.
It's so much. It's like climbing a tree. It's always harder to get down.
Yeah.
But it's basically. I mean, it's uphill both ways, really.
And but a much steeper hill to try to get rid of government.
Right, because now you have to break up everything from the lobbying to term limits to. Actually, then you actually need some sort of event. You actually need some sort of an event to convince the people to think differently. And unfortunately, for a country to have an awakening to freedom and liberty and to break from authoritarianism, usually takes a tragedy. Unfortunately, some sort of revolution.
We missed our best opportunity, honestly, with the beginning of the Great Recession, because. Just imagine if Ron Paul had been the Republican nominee as the government was melting down.
Ooh.
I mean, not the government, but the economy was melting down. Imagine he's the one person in politics, the one prominent figure in politics at any rate, from any political party who could have just said, there, "Told you so."
Exactly. And that's the thing is you hear the narrative now for 2008 is the big banks. It's like, yeah, that's part of the problem. It was the government. Then the government said, hey, we want to get more houses out to people. Start giving out more loans.
Yep.
And the bank's like, well, we know we're taken care of because we've got people we've got them in our pocket and we're in their pocket.
Yep.
And then they put out the loans. People can't pay. Everyone defaults. It collapses. And if you guys watched, what was it? The Big Short.
I have not actually.
It's basically just the movie talking about it, and it follows a different groups of guys that basically bet on the housing market to crash. They made billions of dollars between them, and at the very end, so Steve Carell plays a character like a hedge fund manager, and he just the line he says, he's talking to his guy. His guy's like, "We got to sell, man." Like they're basically at the tail end of the crash. He's like, "We got to sell our positions. It's now or never. Like we're not going to make any money. Everything's going to die out." They basically were selling certain positions on shorting the market, and he's like, "Sell it all." He goes, "But." He's like, they just didn't care. They knew the taxpayer would pay for it, and all they're gonna do is blame it on immigrants and poor people. The government's gonna blame it on them, and then I think there was a bit of a political turn on that phrase.
Definitely.
But it was basically a good point to say they didn't care because the reality was they didn't care because they knew the government would bail them out. But they didn't really bring to light in the movie to say the government started this. They just say the government helped, but no one really goes back to say the bailout is the problem. The bailout was the real problem. So,
I think it was this book, Economic Facts and Fallacies, Thomas Sowell. I think it was this book. He went into that in detail, and it really did disabuse me of a lot of notions of the narrative, because he goes he went deep into detail about the different laws that were passed, the different policies from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and how that was all implemented. And it was just like, son of a bitch. Here we are.
Right.
You know, it's like, dang it. Why? Why do we keep doing this to ourselves? Like I said, the government sees a problem, tries to fix it, winds up making it worse. And like you said, we get comfortable with the government supposedly taking care of things while it's screwing them up. So we never want to stop them doing what they're doing because we're told they're making it better. We may even acknowledge that, oh yeah, this is really bad right now, but imagine how much worse it would be.
Yeah, I mean, so you might get more into this, Ginger. So you understand driving on icy roads.
Oh yes.
So what is one of the things they always tell you when you're swerving?
Don't slam on the brakes.
Right, don't slam on the brakes or don't overcorrect.
Yeah, don't overcorrect. Yes.
The government literally overcorrects every time there's some sort of recession. So a typical economy basically has periods of growth and periods of slight recession.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just normal. What happens is before the recession hits, government thinks, "Hey, let's do something here," and then that recession actually dips deeper or goes longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's what happened with the New Deal and the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
The Depression actually went longer in the U.S. thanks to the New Deal, and then now with the Great Recession we had, it only exacerbated a bigger problem. It's too big to fail was true because it wasn't the banks that were too big to fail. It was the government backing the banks that was too big to fail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It goes back to what de Tocqueville said way back when. Way back in the 18th century when he was touring the country. Government wants to grow. Government will grow if you're not extremely vigilant. And from reading Democracy in America, I think he was hopeful that we could avoid that, but clearly we have not. And like you said, there really are not clear mechanisms in place to shrink a government. It requires a collective act of will that at least right now we do not have. I mean, you've got people in the ostensibly conservative Republican Party arguing for more paid family leave, and you've even got one guy, Representative Mark Gates, however you pronounce his name, arguing for a conservative version of the Green New Deal. It's like, guys, what makes you think that this is remotely conservative / small government? No, you're just putting a slightly different spin on it. It's the same thing, you freaking fools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a huge moment for me when I became a libertarian in 2015. I was not liking the way the debates were going. I didn't like politics really that much. So I tell my friend Brooke, and so that he actually brought me on to thinking about libertarianism. And so I just say, I don't really like either guy. I don't like Hillary. Trump's kind of whatever. And then I legitimately said, but that Bernie guy, he sounds like sincere, which is true. And I was like, he sounds sincere, and some of the stuff he's proposing, it's definitely like out of the box. But hey, I kind of like him. I didn't, but I wasn't thinking about voting for him. And he just kind of breaks it down like, so who's going to pay for all that crap he's proposing?
Right.
What? You're going to pay for it. Like,
what?
And I'm like, well, yeah, just understanding it on a larger scale. I thought, oh wait, yeah. Have you heard? I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense then. And he goes, "Have you heard of this guy, Gary Johnson? Have you looked into him?" So I looked into it, started watching videos and such, and I was like, oh. And then I start looking at different events in history, at least in my lifetime, that have affected me, like the recession. And even you could say, like, even some aspects of like 9/11 and all this, and the war on terror, and then even looking at the war on drugs, and now the whole border thing. And I was like, okay, everything started to look a little clear. Like, okay, now it all makes sense. It's not all these, I mean, all these other people are definitely at fault, all these companies, all these corporations. Yeah, they're having, but they're only going to act that way if they're incentivized by the state. You give people an incentive, they will do something. If you say, not that I'm saying don't help people, but if you incentivize something like single motherhood, if you say, oh, if you're a single mom, you can only provide this much income, we'll give you money. Don't be surprised when single motherhood becomes a problem.
Right. Exactly.
And then you start having a bunch of boys raised by women, and now they're not really. And then now you start having studies coming out saying, hey, believe it or not, boys need men in the house.
What?
Yeah. And then you go other ways too. It's like, believe it or not, banks can just fall apart and people can find other jobs with other banks. But no, we got to keep these banks floating with tax dollars. So
I don't know what crazy sorcery it is that you're proposing here, but I call bullshit.
Exactly.
No, I mean, you can make the same argument when it comes to private charity as well, like incentivizing bad behavior. The difference is the private charity, the private individual who's helping, say, the single mother, can realize, you know what? This lady's just taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah.
I can cut her off.
And as much as that sucks for them, on a larger scale, again, one of those topics that libertarians are only talking about is big picture social trends, is it will change the trends. Fewer people will engage in behaviors that put them in those situations.
And the single motherhood issue, that's actually something I and my mom and my family has basically seen firsthand because, well, my mom was basically a single mother.
Right.
And, a long time ago, she tried getting, assistance with taking care of me, help. And, the program, I can't remember if it was food stamps or what it was, but whatever it was that she was seeking help from, which was a government thing, they have these, I don't know if many people know, or even if you guys know, they actually have rules that you have to follow when getting them. But like the rules are outrageous. Right. Like my mom had to because my mom was having trouble finding work. So it was like, oh, well, you have to give us this X many hours of you searching for work. And, it was like a huge amount of hours where it's like, you mean I have to spend this amount of hours looking for work while taking care of the house, while taking care of my kid, while taking care of other family. And so just like she had to have this many hours of that, and then she had to do this, and she had to do that. And all these things they really didn't give her leeway with, but she remembers whenever she would sit in the thing to wait and meet with someone, there was one woman when she saw who had multiple kids, 4 or 5 kids with her, and she was just getting it more easily than her, and my mom only had one she needed help with.
Right.
Oh, and she had 4 or 5 kids and she was pregnant.
Ooh. It is something odd. It's almost like the system is set up to punish those, or I'll just say punish. It's to punish those who are actually trying to be like, okay, I'm in the situation, I'm going to get myself out of it. I need a little help right now, but by golly, I'm going to work to get to where I don't need it. Whereas those who are more than happy to stay in the system, those people, it's like for whatever reason, they're able to work the system, game the system, however it is, to get whatever it is they think they need, to get whatever it is they want out of it, essentially.
Yeah, basically,
It's
yeah.
strange. It's genuinely strange. I don't understand it. Now, and granted, I don't have statistics to back that up. That's entirely anecdotal.
And it's anecdotal for me too, but this is like me and my family saw with our own eyes. Like, you know, my mom, like I said, my mom tried getting help and they were a hard ass on her, but with this other person who had multiple kids, so they had to give her more money because she needed more help. Well,
right.
Have to do as much.
Mm-hmm.
And which one could argue that, like, well, she doesn't have to do as much because she has a lot more kids to take care of. Well, okay, but that's still a lot of leeway they're giving her, because my mom had, like, I again, I can't remember the amount of hours, but basically, even if you, like, cut it down to consider for the amounts of kids this other woman had, it would still be a crap ton of hours he had to put in looking for work and, like, trying to get to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've seen it with that. And I remember in I think it was my second to last year of school, because either my second to last or my last year of school, because whichever year I had my semester of taking politics, my political teacher, because we had to do a discussion about Social Security and that stuff.
Oh.
And she was talking, it was either my discussion post or another student's discussion post, where she was like, yeah, it's not necessarily easy to take care of stuff, because she had a friend who had 7 people using her security number on her, and they were giving her such a hard time to figure out the solution to fix it.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I can't remember the specific details, but there were like 7 or how many people who had her security number. They were using her social security number and basically giving her a hard time. Like, okay, is this really your social security number? You need to clarify this, you need to clarify that. And it's like, and it basically was so hard on her that my teacher and her friend are basically like, dude, if this wasn't mine, why would I come to you saying there's people using my money that I'm supposed to be getting down the line? Like, why would I lie about that? That'd be a good plan to give money out of people.
I don't know. I mean, the system, the welfare system, is a bureaucratic nightmare. It really is. There's no doubt about it. It reminds me of something interesting. I was listening to Andrew Yang was on Shapiro's Sunday Special earlier today. I was listening to that, and I mean, hard to say how much he really means it, but Yang did say he's not a huge fan of bureaucracy. So kind of really doesn't like it, and they should talk for a while about his what did he call it? Freedom dividend proposal, where you get like $1,000 a month, $1,000 from the government every month, and it would be like an opt-in sort of thing. Like, if you want to, you can do this, but you don't get any other welfare assistance. It's like, that's right. That's what you get. It's either or. It's either the welfare that we have now or that. Which is like, okay, that's an interesting proposal, and could be I don't know that I would want to. I wouldn't want to stay there, but it could be a first step to weaning people off of the current system.
Working or not, though, you could keep it.
Yeah.
You could keep it for both. So my understanding of it, if you were on the freedom dividend, you would opt out of all other welfare, but you could remain on it for as long as you're living, working or not. So you could have it as a income, or you could have it for whatever else.
I even understand where he's coming from with that, because the way the current welfare system is set up, it's like, as soon as you get a job and you're ready to get on your feet, all the assistance goes away, and then you're like arguably worse off than you were when you started, because Now,
Right.
you have all the same financial difficulties, and you're working.
Right. The thing about it, now this is my logic, I guess,
Yeah.
my rationale for it. If Andrew Yang, like, so I'm not going to vote for Andrew Yang.
No, neither am I.
But, but if he is elected and the freedom dividend does come about, I will opt in for it. Because I think it is a moral duty of all libertarians to try to take back as much money as they can from the government. That's my rationale for libertarians who have the option of getting welfare through the least crazy means possible. It's a way to get your money back. Because if you're paying so much, so I think combined between state and federal, like I usually have paid a few $1,000s in, and then I get like a couple, maybe $2,000 back or something. And I just figured, you know what, like it's better that they give it to me than to spend it on something else.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I mean, granted, yes, it is still money that, you know, there will probably come a point where I'm getting more money than I'm contributing to the system. But then I just figured like it's probably like there's a lot of libertarians who are kind of going down the path like I don't know if you've heard like accelerationism.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're basically kind of going on the accelerationist train with the UBI. Basically, like they're basically both ironically and unironically supporting Yang to hasten the collapse of the government, so that we could actually move on to a more free way of organizing ourselves.
Burn it down. Burn it down.
Exactly. Burn it down. Give me all the money. I'll buy my guns, my food, my shelter, and prepare myself. Basically, people are saying like, you know, when you there's like a meme I saw. It was like, you know, when you've been saving up your what is it? When you signed up with the Yang Gang and you're saving up all your money, buying up all your guns, and then the police come and confiscate your guns, and it's like it's showing a picture of someone who's like full like commando setup, and it's like, here we go, like ready for the revolution. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
My question is I can't remember, is Andrew Yang full Asian or is he a Hapa?
He is Taiwanese.
Oh, he's Taiwanese. That's right. Full Taiwanese.
Yeah. And
So
I'm half Taiwanese. I think he's a traitor.
I was gonna say. I mean, is he? Is he a secret plant of the ethno state or
no? No. He's so. My problem with him, just on an individual level.
Yeah.
I mean, policy wise, that's a whole other thing. But as an individual, I will call him like an actual traitor to Taiwan, because Taiwan was founded upon basically breaking off from China. It was the war with the communists. They run off to Taiwan and say, here, we're going to set up our country. And we're like, as socialist, as much as Taiwan has a lot of social programs, they have universal health care. They have public transportation pretty much everywhere. Never mind the roads, but they have all this stuff. So it could almost be seen as a very socialistic nation. But the attitude for the longest time, ever since pretty much the second half of the last century, was we are never going to be communists. I mean, they've declared martial law. They've gotten and they've actually like committed even like some atrocities against the people, but never on the level of communism. They always said we'd never be communists. Like we have, like they basically kind of flirt with that slight bit between, you know, authoritarianism when they need to, but for the most part, fairly free compared to the rest of the world.
Okay.
Here comes Andrew Yang in the States and wants to basically institute like crazy amounts of like social programs. I don't know if you've heard about some of his more radical, well, I shouldn't say radical, more outlandish proposals in his policy. He wants to create a whole department of the government called the Legion of Builders and Destroyers.
What now?
Yes. Look at his policies. You look at Andrew Yang's policies on his website. You scroll down to something called modernizing the military budget. And then at the very bottom, there's a part he says, I will create a department called the Legion of Builders and Destroyers. It will be the Legion commander will be in charge of overseeing projects in major cities where they will clear out any derelict or abandoned buildings in favor of basically eliminating like urban blights and poor buildings to open up for infrastructure that will promote like the vitality of a city.
Mm-hmm.
This department will have the power to act in its own interests, superseding the authority of local ordinances and governments.
Oh, hell no.
So it's basically eminent domain of the department.
I'm gonna say no. Not a fan.
Yeah.
I think this is when you get right to, okay, but I'm gonna use your UBI to buy all the guns.
Yeah. So it's
when Andrew Yang's
taking...
Legion comes to your neighborhood.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, he basically, you know, I'd say he's just a traitor communist that's trying to become president in the States. And I'm like, that's where I'm like, you know, if I ever got to meet him, like, dude, why are you a traitor? Seriously. You're supposed to be anti-communist, if anything. Like, go any other route. But you had to like be basically make America communist for the first time, not again, but for the first time. And it's like, why? It's just, it goes against so much because like in Taiwan, you don't just, communism is it's almost a dirty word.
Right. No,
you don't talk about China, you don't talk about Mao Zedong, you don't talk about any of that.
No, I would imagine not. I mean, gosh, that's a whole nother thing with Taiwan. I kind of hate our official policy of one country, two systems.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that's what we call BS. It's either two separate countries or it's not.
Well, we wouldn't have liked it if the French treated us that way during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, and on that note, we have hit our ending time, actually, guys.
Yeah, actually.
I know, but yeah, I mean, we didn't really get to touch on the rest of our topics, like the jail one, but we did touch on the wall a little bit there at the beginning. Yeah, you know, and got to discuss some things we didn't know we were going to be discussing, but that's the whole point of the podcast, just having a nice conversation, talk about whatever comes to mind, and we'll probably just have to have you on again, Amos, to discuss the rest.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
I'd be down for that.
And I'll definitely be looking at having one of you or both of you on our show. Granted, it's on Sunday mornings, though. I don't know if you guys can do that.
Hey,
it all depends on the Sunday. Much of my mass schedule is determined by my daughter's work schedule.
Okay.
Sundays are my relaxation and laundry days, so I can make a dude. Like,
okay,
all right.
Whenever, and I'll be there.
Just pick one, and if I can make it, I will.
Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, we discussed a lot. Amos, do you have any final words before I say my piece?
We're good. I said everything at the beginning, so we're good there.
Sweet. Ginger, you got anything?
I'm good. Close it out.
All right. And those were our thoughts on libertarianism and how to get it to progress further. And that's true, as we said, proper discussion and debate rather than, just calling everyone a statist, because that's not going to get us everywhere. And we have to start off small in order to make big changes, as we've seen throughout history of like the recession and other issues. Whenever you try to speed up change or you try to fix something before it's broken, you're going to have more issues than you started off with. So on that note, enjoy the rest of your evening, guys, and keep fighting the good fight.